I was standing in the kitchen of our downtown loft, arranging champagne glasses for our engagement party, when I heard his best man's voice carry from the living room. "To Adrian and Maya, and to Jessica, just in case Maya ever messes up, you'll always be the backup." The men erupted in laughter. My hands froze on the crystal stemware. My fiancé's laugh was the loudest of all. At the time, I told myself it was just crude humor. The kind of inappropriate joke men make when they've had too much to drink and think they're being clever. But something about the way they laughed, the knowing quality of it, the inside joke intimacy, made my stomach tighten with unease I couldn't quite articulate. I walked into the living room carrying a tray of glasses, my professional smile firmly in place. Adrian's best man, Marcus, was mid-toast, surrounded by 8 of Adrian's closest friends from college and law school. "Maya," Marcus called out with exaggerated enthusiasm. "We were just saying how lucky Adrian is to have found you. The perfect woman, beautiful, successful, tolerant of his shit." More laughter. I set down the tray and moved to stand beside Adrian, who pulled me close and kissed my temple. His hand rested possessively on my hip, and I could smell the bourbon on his breath. "The luckiest man alive," he said, looking at me with what appeared to be genuine affection. "I don't deserve her." "Damn right you don't," Marcus agreed, raising his glass. "But seriously, man, you managed to lock down a senior architect at Thompson and Associates, who looks like that and still puts up with your sorry ass. That's talent." The other men laughed and raised their glasses in agreement. I smiled graciously, accepting the compliments that somehow felt more like inventory assessments than genuine praise. These were the men Adrian had known since his undergraduate years at Yale, his fraternity brothers and law school study partners who had climbed the ranks of Boston's legal establishment alongside him. I'd met most of them multiple times over the 3 years Adrian and I had been together, at dinners and holiday parties and weekend trips to the Cape. They were uniformly successful, confident to the point of arrogance, and bonded by shared experiences I could never fully access. Their wives and girlfriends were pleasant enough, but I'd always sensed a certain distance, as if I were being evaluated for membership in a club whose requirements were never fully explained. "Who's Jessica?" I asked casually, reaching for my own glass of champagne. The question landed in the room like a stone dropped into still water. The laughter stopped abruptly. Several men exchanged glances I couldn't quite interpret. Marcus's face flushed slightly, and he opened his mouth to speak, but Adrian cut him off smoothly. "Nobody important," Adrian said, his hand tightening almost imperceptibly on my hip. "Just an ex-girlfriend from law school. Marcus thinks he's hilarious making old jokes." He shot Marcus a look that was friendly on the surface, but carried an unmistakable warning underneath. Marcus raised his hands in mock surrender. "My bad, man. Too much bourbon, you know how I get." The moment passed. The conversation shifted to football and office politics and upcoming cases at the various law firms represented in the room. I stayed for another hour, playing the role of gracious hostess, before excusing myself to check on the catering staff setting up food in the kitchen. But the name Jessica had lodged in my mind like a splinter I couldn't remove. Later that night, after the last guests had left and Adrian had fallen asleep beside me, I lay awake thinking about the way his friends had laughed, about the knowing quality of that laughter, about how quickly Adrian had dismissed my question, and how readily everyone had accepted that dismissal. It was probably nothing. A stupid inside joke that had outlived whatever relevance it once had. Adrian had dated plenty of women before me. He was 34, good-looking, successful. Of course, he had a history. But something kept nagging at me. The backup fiancé. Not the backup girlfriend or the backup hookup. The backup fiancé. That specificity felt significant in a way I couldn't quite articulate. I told myself I was being paranoid. Adrian loved me. He'd proposed 6 months ago with a stunning oval-cut diamond during a weekend in Newport, getting down on one knee at sunset on the cliff walk, while a strategically positioned photographer captured the moment. He'd introduced me to his parents within 3 months of our first date. He'd moved me into his downtown loft after a year. He talked constantly about our future together, about the house we'd buy in Brookline, about the partnership track he was on at his law firm, about the children we'd have once my career at Thompson and Associates was more established. Everything pointed to a man who was genuinely committed to building a life with me, except for that laughter. That knowing, inside joke laughter that suggested his friends knew something I didn't. I fell asleep sometime after 3, and when I woke the next morning, Adrian was already in the shower, humming cheerfully, apparently unbothered by whatever had transpired the night before. The next few weeks passed normally. I threw myself into work on a major commercial development project in the Seaport District, spending long hours at the office refining designs and coordinating with contractors. Adrian was equally busy, preparing for a high-profile corporate litigation case that had him working past midnight most nights. We'd pass each other in the loft like ships, leaving notes about dinner plans and weekend obligations, stealing quick kisses before rushing off to our respective obligations. Our wedding was scheduled for June, 5 months away. My mother had already purchased her mother-of-the-bride dress. The venue was booked, a stunning estate in the Berkshires that cost more than my first car. The invitations were being printed. Everything was proceeding according to plan, and the engagement party incident faded into the background of more immediate concerns. Until I saw the text messages. It was a Saturday afternoon in late February. Adrian had left his phone on the bathroom counter while he went for a run, something he did every weekend regardless of weather. I was getting ready to meet my sister for lunch when his phone buzzed with an incoming message. The preview appeared on the locked screen, and I glanced at it automatically, the way you do when someone's phone buzzes near you. The message was from a contact labeled J. Whitmore, and it read, "Missing you. Can't wait until tomorrow night. Wear that dress I like." My first thought was that it was a misdirected text, something meant for someone else that had accidentally been sent to Adrian's number. But then I saw the message history, dozens of texts, the most recent from just 2 days ago. My hands were shaking as I picked up his phone. I knew his passcode. He'd given it to me freely months ago, the same way I'd given him mine. We had nothing to hide from each other, or so I'd believed. The messages loaded, and I stood in our bathroom reading through a conversation that made the floor tilt beneath my feet. They went back years, 3 years to be precise, starting almost exactly 1 month after Adrian and I had begun dating. The texts were intimate, affectionate, filled with inside jokes and references to shared experiences. There were photos, her in various locations, restaurants and hotel rooms, and what appeared to be Adrian's office. There were plans for dinners and weekend trips and holidays. There, scattered throughout the messages, were references to me. "How's the architect?" Jessica would ask. "Still keeping you entertained?" Adrian would respond with things like, "She's good, smart, but different from you, you know," or "Maya's working late again, miss you." The messages painted a picture I could barely comprehend. Adrian hadn't ended things with Jessica when he started dating me. He'd simply continued both relationships simultaneously, parallel tracks that apparently never intersected. I scrolled back further, my mind struggling to process what I was seeing. There were messages from the week he'd proposed to me. "Jessica, heard through the grapevine. Congratulations, I guess. Adrian, nothing changes with us, you know that. She doesn't know about you. Nobody's going to tell her. It's all fine. Jessica, whatever you say, counselor, see you Thursday." I sat down on the bathroom floor, my sister's lunch appointment completely forgotten. How was this possible? How had he maintained 2 relationships for 3 years without me suspecting anything? I thought about all the nights he'd worked late, all the weekend trips for depositions and conferences, all the times he'd been unreachable for hours because he was in court or meeting with clients. I thought about his friends' laughter at the engagement party. They'd known. All of them had known. The backup fiancé wasn't a joke. It was the truth, casually revealed by drunk men who assumed I'd never understand what they were really saying. My phone buzzed with a text from my sister asking if I was still coming to lunch. I ignored it. Instead, I did something I never thought I'd do. I started methodically going through Adrian's phone, documenting everything. I forwarded key text messages to my own phone. I screenshotted conversations and photos. I went through his email and found correspondence with Jessica going back even further than the texts. 5 years, spanning his entire 3rd year of law school and beyond. I found calendar appointments disguised as work obligations. I found credit card statements showing charges at restaurants and hotels I'd never been to, on dates when Adrian claimed to be working or traveling for business. The scope of the deception was staggering. This wasn't a brief affair or a moment of weakness. This was a sustained, carefully orchestrated double life maintained with the kind of attention to detail Adrian brought to his legal work. He'd created entire systems to keep me and Jessica separate, to ensure neither of us would accidentally discover the other's existence. And he'd done it all while planning a wedding with me, while talking about children and mortgages and growing old together. I heard the front door open. Adrian's voice called out, "Maya, you still here? I thought you were meeting Jen for lunch." I stood up, carefully placed his phone exactly where I'd found it, and walked out of the bathroom. Adrian was in the kitchen, sweaty from his run, pouring himself a glass of water. He smiled when he saw me, that easy, affectionate smile I'd fallen in love with 3 years ago. "You okay?" he asked. "You look pale." "I'm fine," I said, my voice surprisingly steady. "Just a headache. I'm going to cancel lunch with Jen." "Want me to get you some Advil?" he offered, already moving toward the medicine cabinet. "No, I'm okay. I just need to lie down for a bit." He kissed my forehead, his hand cupping the back of my head in a gesture that had always made me feel safe and loved. Now it just made me want to vomit. "Get some rest," he said. "I'm going to shower and then I've got to review some documents for Monday's hearing. Wake me up if you need anything." I nodded and went to our bedroom, closing the door behind me. Then I sat on the edge of our bed, the bed we shared, where he held me at night and whispered about our future together, and tried to figure out what to do with the knowledge that was burning through my chest like acid. The first instinct was to confront him immediately, to throw his phone at his face and demand explanations, to scream and cry and make him acknowledge what he'd done. But something stopped me. Maybe it was my architectural training, the methodical approach to problem-solving that had made me successful in my career. Maybe it was simple self-preservation. Or maybe it was the cold rage that was beginning to replace the initial shock, the fury at being played for a fool for 3 years by someone I'd trusted completely. If I confronted him now, he'd lie. He was a lawyer, trained in persuasion and manipulation. He'd gaslight me, tell me I was misinterpreting things, find explanations that would make me doubt what I'd seen with my own eyes. Or he'd confess and beg for forgiveness, promise to end things with Jessica, swear that I was the one he really loved, that it had all been a terrible mistake he'd been trying to figure out how to fix. And part of me, the part that had loved him for 3 years, that had believed in our future together, might be tempted to believe him, might want to salvage the relationship because the alternative was too painful to contemplate, might convince myself that people make mistakes and deserve second chances. But this wasn't a mistake. This was a choice Adrian had made repeatedly, every single day for 3 years. And if I confronted him now, I'd never know the full extent of what he'd done. I'd never know if there were other women besides Jessica. I'd never know which of his friends had helped him maintain the lie. I'd never know how deep the betrayal really went. So instead of confronting him, I made a different choice. I decided to investigate, to document everything, to build a case against him the way he'd build a case against opposing counsel in court. And then, when I had all the evidence, when I understood the complete scope of his deception, I would destroy him. Not with screaming or crying or emotional confrontation, but with cold, calculated precision. I would take everything he valued, his reputation, his relationships, his career, his carefully constructed public image, and I would dismantle it piece by piece. The wedding was still 5 months away. That gave me time. Time to investigate, to plan, to prepare my revenge so thoroughly that Adrian would never see it coming until it was too late. I sent a text to my sister canceling lunch and claiming I wasn't feeling well, which was true enough. Then I opened my laptop and began creating a document where I could organize all the evidence I'd found. Text messages, emails, credit card statements, calendar entries. Everything that proved Adrian had been living a double life. As I worked, a strange calm settled over me. The shock and hurt were still there, churning beneath the surface, but they were overlaid now with a sense of purpose that felt almost clarifying. I'd spent 3 years believing I was building a future with someone who loved me. Now I knew the truth, and instead of being destroyed by that truth, I was going to use it. Adrian emerged from the shower an hour later, dressed casually in jeans and a sweater, and settled at the dining table with his laptop and a stack of legal briefs. He worked quietly, occasionally glancing over at me with concern. "You sure you're okay?" he asked at one point. "You've been really quiet." "Just tired," I said. "This seaport project is exhausting." "You work too hard," he said affectionately. "We both do. Maybe we should plan a vacation. Get away for a long weekend before the wedding madness really kicks in." "That sounds nice," I said, and I even smiled at him. It was surprisingly easy to maintain the performance, to pretend everything was normal while secretly cataloging his lies. Maybe because I'd been performing for 3 years without realizing it, playing the role of beloved fiancé in a relationship that was built on deception. What was a few more months of acting? That night, I lay beside Adrian in our bed, listening to his breathing even out as he fell asleep. His arm was draped across my waist, his body warm against mine, and I felt nothing but cold calculation. Tomorrow, I would begin the real investigation. I would find out everything about Jessica Whitmore. I would trace every lie Adrian had told, every fake business trip, every fabricated late night at the office. I would understand the full scope of what he'd done. And then I would make him pay in ways he couldn't possibly anticipate. The next morning, Sunday, I woke before Adrian and went for a walk through the city, needing space to think clearly. Boston was cold in February, the kind of bitter cold that cuts through even the warmest coat. But I welcomed the discomfort. It kept me focused, kept the emotional devastation at bay, and allowed me to think strategically about what came next. I'd spent half the night lying awake, my mind racing through possibilities and plans. By dawn, I'd settled on an approach. First, I needed to know everything about Jessica Whitmore. Who she was, where she lived, what her relationship with Adrian actually looked like from her perspective. Did she know about me? Did she know he was engaged? Or was she as deceived as I'd been? I stopped at a coffee shop in the North End and pulled out my phone, searching social media for Jessica Whitmore. There were dozens of results, but I narrowed it down by location and age, cross-referencing with details from Adrian's text messages. I found her within 10 minutes. Jessica Whitmore, 28 years old, associate at Henderson and Cross, a mid-sized corporate law firm in Boston. Harvard Law School graduate, originally from Connecticut. In a relationship with, the status was set to private, but I could see enough of her profile to piece together a picture. She was beautiful, in a polished, professional way. Dark hair cut in a sharp bob, designer clothes, the kind of carefully curated social media presence that suggested someone who understood how to manage her public image. Her photos showed her at legal conferences, charity galas, weekend trips to Martha's Vineyard and the Hamptons. There were photos with friends, with colleagues, at firm events and social gatherings. And there, in the background of several photos from the past year, was Adrian. Not prominently featured, not tagged, but unmistakably present, his face partially visible in group shots or candid moments captured at what appeared to be firm parties and social events. If you weren't looking for him specifically, you might not even notice. But I was looking, and once I'd spotted him in one photo, I found him in half a dozen others. They were careful. I had to give them credit for that. They didn't post couple photos or tag each other in obvious ways. But the evidence was there for anyone who knew what to look for. I searched deeper, creating a fake social media profile so I could view more of Jessica's friends and connections. I found photos from a ski trip to Vermont, the same weekend Adrian had told me he was at a legal conference in New York. I found pictures from a weekend in Portland, Maine, when he'd claimed to be visiting his college roommate. Each discovery was another piece of evidence, another layer of deception I'd been too trusting to question at the time. But here's what I couldn't figure out. Did Jessica know about me? The text messages suggested she did, at least at some level. She'd referenced the architect and had sent that message about hearing through the grapevine when Adrian proposed. But did she understand that I wasn't just a casual girlfriend? Did she know Adrian was planning to marry me in 5 months? Did she believe she was the other woman, or did she think she was the primary relationship and I was the secret? I needed to know, because my revenge plan depended on understanding the full dynamic of what Adrian had constructed. I finished my coffee and walked back to the loft, formulating my next steps. When I got home, Adrian was making breakfast, whistling cheerfully while he scrambled eggs. "Feeling better?" he asked, kissing my cheek. "Much better," I said. "The walk helped clear my head." "Good. I was thinking we could spend the day together. Maybe go to the MFA, grab dinner in the South End. We haven't had a real date day in weeks." It was true. Between my work on the Seaport project and his trial preparation, we'd barely seen each other lately. And now I understood why Adrian had been so willing to accept our busy schedules without complaint. It gave him more time with Jessica. "That sounds perfect," I said, settling at the counter while he plated the eggs. "Actually, I wanted to talk to you about the wedding anyway. I've been thinking we should finalize the guest list this week. Send out the invitations soon." Adrian nodded, sliding a plate across to me. "Good idea. My mom's been asking about it. She wants to make sure all the relatives get enough notice for travel. And your friends from law school," I added casually. "Marcus and everyone. Have you heard from them much lately?" "Here and there," Adrian said, taking a bite of toast. "You know how it is, everyone's busy with work and families. We mostly keep in touch through group chat." "That's nice," I said, "that you all stayed close after school. Not everyone manages that." "Yeah, we got lucky, good group of guys." He smiled at me, utterly relaxed, completely confident that I suspected nothing. "They're all excited about the wedding. Marcus is already planning the bachelor party. I think he's got some ridiculous golf weekend planned." "What about your exes?" I asked, keeping my tone light and conversational. "Did you want to invite anyone from before we met? I know some people stay friendly with their exes." Adrian's expression flickered, just for a moment, before settling back into casual indifference. "Nah, I don't really keep in touch with anyone from before you. That's all ancient history." The lie was so smooth, so practiced, that if I didn't know the truth, I would have believed him completely. This was the man I'd trusted for 3 years, the man I'd agreed to marry, and he lied to my face without the slightest hesitation. "That's probably smart," I said, matching his casual tone. "Exes at weddings always seem awkward, even if everyone's friendly about it." "Exactly," Adrian agreed, clearly relieved to move past the topic. "No reason to invite complications." We spent the day at the Museum of Fine Arts, wandering through galleries and discussing the exhibitions like the educated, cultured couple we appeared to be. Adrian held my hand, made thoughtful observations about the artwork, and treated me with the affectionate attention that had made me fall in love with him in the first place. And the entire time I was cataloging lies, calculating revenge, planning his destruction. That evening, after dinner in the South End, we returned to the loft and Adrian settled in to watch a game while I pretended to review architectural plans on my laptop. Instead, I was researching private investigators. I decided I needed professional help to fully understand the scope of Adrian's deception. The text messages and social media provided a starting point, but I wanted everything. Every meeting, every trip, every moment of the double life he'd been maintaining. I found a firm that specialized in infidelity investigations, with excellent reviews and a reputation for discretion. Their website promised comprehensive surveillance, detailed reports, and ironclad evidence that would hold up in court if necessary. Perfect. On Monday morning, I called them from my office at Thompson and Associates, booking a consultation for Tuesday afternoon. I told Adrian I had a client meeting and would be back late. He didn't question it. The private investigation firm operated out of a nondescript office building in Cambridge. The investigator I met with, a woman named Sarah Chen who looked more like a software engineer than a private detective, reviewed the evidence I'd compiled with professional detachment. "This is very thorough," she said, scrolling through the screenshots on my laptop. "You've done most of the preliminary work already. What exactly are you looking for from us?" "Everything," I said. "I want to know where he goes, who he sees, how often he's with this other woman. I want documentation of every lie he's told me. I want to understand the complete scope of what he's been doing." "And what's your goal?" Sarah asked. "Are you planning to confront him, file for divorce?" "We're not married yet," I said. "The wedding is in 5 months. And yes, I'm planning to confront him, but not in private, not in a way that he can explain away or minimize. I want to expose him publicly, in front of everyone who matters to him. I want him to lose everything." Sarah nodded slowly. "I understand. You want maximum impact." "Exactly. That's doable," she said. "But it'll take time and it won't be cheap. Full surveillance, documentation, the level of detail you're describing, you're looking at several months of work and probably $40,000. I didn't hesitate. "Do it. Start immediately. I want daily reports of his movements, copies of any communications you can access legally, video documentation when possible. Everything." "You'll have it," Sarah promised, and she was true to her word. Starting the next day, I began receiving detailed reports of Adrian's activities. The surveillance team followed him from work to Jessica's apartment in Back Bay 3 nights the first week. They documented dinners at expensive restaurants, weekend trips to New Hampshire and Vermont, long evenings at her place that extended until early morning. The evidence was damning and comprehensive, but more than that, it was heartbreaking. Watching videos of Adrian with Jessica, laughing with her, holding her hand, kissing her with the same casual affection he showed me, made the betrayal visceral in a way the text messages hadn't. This wasn't just infidelity. This was a complete parallel relationship. Adrian had built an entire second life with Jessica, complete with routines and inside jokes and apparent genuine affection. He'd somehow managed to divide himself between 2 women, giving each of us enough attention that neither suspected we weren't getting all of him. The surveillance revealed patterns I'd missed completely. Tuesday and Thursday nights were his nights with Jessica. When he told me, he had standing meetings with senior partners to discuss case strategy. Weekend trips I'd thought were for legal conferences or depositions were actually romantic getaways with her. Even some of his late nights at the office were real, but Jessica would meet him there, and they'd work late together before going back to her place. What made it worse was realizing how many people were complicit in the deception. Sarah's team documented Adrian meeting with Marcus and other law school friends, with Jessica present. They'd all go out together, this entire social circle that knew about both relationships and actively helped Adrian maintain the separation. His friends would provide alibis, cover stories, warnings if I was ever anywhere near places Adrian and Jessica frequented. It was a conspiracy involving dozens of people, all dedicated to helping Adrian deceive me. After 2 weeks of surveillance, Sarah called me into her office for an update. "We've got something you need to see," she said, pulling up a video on her computer. It showed Adrian and Jessica at a jewelry store in Newbury Street. The timestamp showed it was from 3 days ago, during a lunch break when Adrian had told me he was meeting with a client. In the video, Adrian and Jessica were looking at rings, engagement rings. The audio was muffled, but Sarah's team had enhanced it enough that I could hear fragments of conversation. "Ready to tell her," Jessica's voice. "Just need the right time," Adrian's voice. "Tired of waiting." "I know, baby, I know." I watched the video 3 times, feeling my hands go numb. Adrian was planning to propose to Jessica. While engaged to me, while planning our wedding, he was also planning to propose to another woman. The sheer audacity of it was almost impressive. Almost. "There's more," Sarah said, pulling up financial records her team had obtained through legal but ethically gray methods. "He's been moving money around. transferring funds from your joint accounts into personal accounts you don't have access to. Not huge amounts, a few thousand here and there, but it's been going on for 8 months, since right after he proposed to you. He's been stealing from me. My voice came out flat, emotionless. I'd moved past shock into a kind of cold clarity that felt almost peaceful. Essentially, yes, we think he's building an exit fund, money he can access without your knowledge if he needs to disappear quickly. Show me everything, I said. Sarah did. The financial records painted a picture of systematic theft. Adrian had been siphoning money from our joint accounts, from my personal accounts he had access to, even from my business expense account at Thompson and Associates. The total was over $40,000, carefully stolen in increments small enough that I hadn't noticed the changes in our account balances. He'd also taken out a credit card in both our names without telling me, running up charges I was legally responsible for. And he'd forged my signature on a home equity line of credit application for his condo in Cambridge that he'd owned before we moved in together. A property I had no ownership stake in, but whose debt I'd now be liable for as his spouse once we married. He's been planning this for months, I said, studying the documents spread across Sarah's desk. The whole time he's been planning our wedding, he's been setting me up to take on his debts while he prepares to disappear with her. It looks that way, Sarah confirmed. This is a sophisticated operation. Your fiancé isn't just having an affair. He's running a long-term financial scam. The realization crystallized something that had been forming in my mind over the past 2 weeks. Adrian didn't love me. He'd never loved me. I was a mark, a target, someone whose resources and professional success made me valuable to him in ways that had nothing to do with genuine affection or partnership. He'd selected me deliberately, the same way he'd selected clients for his legal practice. I was a senior architect at a prestigious firm, with a good salary and excellent professional prospects. I came from a family with money, not wealthy by Boston standards, but comfortable. My parents had given us $50,000 as an engagement gift, money that was sitting in our joint account, money Adrian now had access to. I'd been so flattered by his attention, so grateful that this handsome, successful lawyer had chosen me, that I'd never questioned his motivations. I'd simply assumed that someone like Adrian, Yale-educated, from a good family, working at a top law firm, must be genuine in his affections, because what would someone like him have to gain from deceiving someone like me? But now I understood. Adrian's family wasn't wealthy. They were comfortable, but his father was a retired public school teacher and his mother was a nurse. Adrian's success, the expensive loft, the designer clothes, the luxury vacations, was built on debt and on money extracted from the women in his life. Jessica came from a wealthy Connecticut family. Her father was a hedge fund manager, her mother from old New England money. That's what Adrian wanted from her, access to her family's wealth and connections. From me, he wanted different things. Professional credibility, perhaps. My work at Thompson and Associates opened doors in Boston's architectural and real estate development communities, circles that could benefit his legal career. And my salary, which was substantial, could fund the lifestyle he wanted to maintain. He'd been playing us both, extracting different resources from each relationship while maintaining the performance of genuine love with both of us. It was brilliant in a sociopathic kind of way, and it would have worked if he hadn't gotten careless with his phone that one Saturday afternoon. "What do you want to do with all this?" Sarah asked, gesturing to the files spread across her desk. "I want you to keep documenting everything," I said. "I want to know every move he makes between now and June. And I want you to do something else for me." "What's that?" "I want you to contact Jessica Whitmore, discreetly. I want to know exactly what Adrian has told her about me, about our relationship, about his intentions. I need to understand what she thinks is happening here." Sarah raised an eyebrow. "That's risky. If she tells Adrian we've made contact." "She won't," I said, "because we're going to approach her in a way that makes her question everything Adrian has told her. We're going to plant seeds of doubt. And then we're going to watch Adrian's whole operation fall apart." The plan was beginning to take shape. not just exposing Adrian's infidelity, but destroying the entire infrastructure he'd built to support his double life. His friendships with the men who'd helped deceive me. His relationship with Jessica, which was built on just as many lies as his relationship with me. His professional reputation, which would be shattered once his colleagues and clients learned about his fraud and manipulation. And his financial security, which depended on stealing from me and extracting money from Jessica's wealthy family. I was going to take all of it away from him, and I was going to do it at our wedding, in front of 300 guests with his parents and his colleagues and all his friends watching. It would be spectacular. A week later, Sarah called me with an update on Jessica. "We made contact," she said. "One of my investigators approached her at a coffee shop near her office, claiming to be a friend of a friend who'd heard she was looking for a new apartment. Got her talking. Turns out Jessica thinks she's Adrian's primary relationship. She told our investigator that Adrian has been sorting things out with his ex-girlfriend. That would be you, because they'd been together when he and Jessica reconnected last year, but that he was ending it and was going to make a clean break soon. She thinks I'm the other woman," I said slowly. "Essentially, yes. Adrian told her you're having trouble accepting that the relationship is over, that he's been trying to let you down easy because you're unstable and he's worried about how you'll react." The audacity was breathtaking. So Jessica has no idea he proposed to me, no idea we're planning a wedding. None whatsoever. She believes Adrian is single, that you're a clingy ex he's trying to extricate himself from, and that they're going to go public with their relationship once he's handled the situation with you. "And she believed that for 3 years?" I asked, "while he was actively living with me and planning a future with me." "Apparently he's very convincing," Sarah said dryly. "He told her that his living situation with you was temporary, that you'd begged him to let you stay in his condo after the breakup because you were struggling financially. Jessica believed she was being patient and understanding by allowing him time to handle a difficult situation with a mentally unstable ex-girlfriend. The lies were so elaborate, so carefully constructed to make each of us complicit in our own deception. I'd trusted Adrian completely because I had no reason to doubt him. Jessica had trusted him because he'd positioned himself as the victim of my alleged instability and clinginess. We'd both been manipulated by someone who understood exactly what story each of us needed to hear to maintain our trust. "Does she suspect anything now?" I asked. "After your investigator made contact." "We planted some seeds," Sarah confirmed. "Mentioned in passing that we'd seen Adrian at several events recently with a woman who looked nothing like the description Jessica had given of you. Asked if maybe he'd moved on faster than expected. Jessica got defensive, said it was probably work-related, but you could see the doubt forming. She's questioning things now." "Good," I said. "I want her questioning everything. Because when this all comes out, I want her to realize she was deceived just as much as I was. I want her to feel exactly what I'm feeling right now." "You're not planning to see her as a victim in all this," Sarah observed. "You're planning to destroy her too." "I'm planning to reveal the truth," I corrected. "What happens after that is up to her. But yes, I want her to suffer. She knew about me, even if Adrian lied about the details. She knew he was involved with someone else, and she chose to continue the relationship anyway. That makes her complicit." Sarah nodded, not judging. "So what's the timeline? When do you want to execute whatever you're planning?" "June 13th, I said. "Our wedding day. I'm going to let Adrian go through with all of it. The ceremony preparations, the bachelor party, all of it. And then, right when he thinks he's gotten away with everything, I'm going to burn his entire life to the ground." The months between February and June were among the strangest of my life. I went through all the motions of being an excited bride-to-be while secretly planning Adrian's destruction. I went to dress fittings and smiled for my mother and bridesmaids. I met with caterers and florists and the wedding planner I'd hired to coordinate everything. I sent out invitations and confirmed RSVPs and pretended to care about centerpiece arrangements and seating charts. And the entire time, I was receiving daily reports from Sarah's surveillance team documenting Adrian's continued relationship with Jessica. They went to Vermont for a ski weekend in March, while Adrian told me he was at a mandatory firm retreat. They spent Easter together at Jessica's family estate in Connecticut, while Adrian claimed he had to work through the holiday preparing for a major trial. They celebrated Jessica's 29th birthday in April with an intimate dinner at one of Boston's most exclusive restaurants. On the same night, Adrian told me he was having dinner with senior partners to discuss his partnership track. The lies were constant and elaborate, and I documented every single one, building a case file that would have impressed any prosecutor. I also made some strategic moves of my own. I opened a new bank account that Adrian didn't know about and began transferring my salary there instead of into our joint account. I secured my personal assets, consulted with my own attorney about protecting my property and finances, and made sure that when everything fell apart, I wouldn't be left financially vulnerable. I contacted each of the women in my bridal party, my sister, my two best friends from architecture school, and my college roommate, and told them privately what I'd discovered. Not about my revenge plan, just about Adrian's infidelity. I needed them to know the truth so they wouldn't try to talk me out of what I was planning, wouldn't push me to forgive him or work things out. They were uniformly supportive and appropriately enraged on my behalf. And I began planning the wedding ceremony itself, making specific choices that would serve my purposes when the time came to expose Adrian. I hired a videographer with explicit instructions to film everything, to capture every moment of the ceremony and reception. I arranged for microphones and speakers that would ensure everyone in attendance could hear clearly. I chose a venue with a large screen that could display presentations, ostensibly for a slideshow of photos, but actually for something very different. Adrian noticed none of this. He was too busy juggling his double life, too confident in his deception to suspect that I'd figured everything out. He played the role of excited groom flawlessly, going to tastings and meeting with the wedding planner and discussing our honeymoon plans with apparent genuine enthusiasm. We were scheduled to spend 2 weeks in Italy after the wedding, touring Tuscany and the Amalfi Coast. Adrian had already requested the time off work and had been researching hotels and restaurants. What he didn't know was that I'd already canceled those reservations. There wasn't going to be a honeymoon. There wasn't going to be a marriage. There was only going to be a reckoning. In late May, 3 weeks before the wedding, Adrian's bachelor party happened. Marcus had planned a weekend in Newport, Rhode Island, golf, dinner at an expensive steakhouse, drinks at the exclusive clubs that catered to wealthy men who wanted to feel like kings for a night. Adrian invited his law school friends, his colleagues from the firm, and his college fraternity brothers. 20 men total, all part of the social circle that had helped him maintain his deception. Sarah's team followed them to Newport and documented everything. The surveillance video showed exactly what I expected, Adrian and his friends behaving like men who believed themselves untouchable. They drank too much, told crude jokes, and congratulated Adrian on successfully managing both situations for so long. Marcus gave a toast that Sarah's team recorded with crystal clarity. To Adrian, who somehow convinced 2 intelligent, successful women that he's worth their time. That's not just luck, gentlemen, that's skill. The men laughed and raised their glasses. Adrian smiled and accepted the praise as if deceiving multiple women was an achievement worth celebrating. Another friend, someone named Derek who worked at Adrian's law firm, added his own toast. May your luck continue, my friend, and may Maya never find out she's married to a man with a backup plan. More laughter, more congratulations, more evidence of a conspiracy that extended far beyond Adrian himself. I watched the surveillance footage in Sarah's office, my hands clenched so tightly that my nails drew blood from my palms. These men weren't just complicit in Adrian's deception. They admired it. They saw it as something clever and admirable rather than cruel and sociopathic. They were actively celebrating his ability to manipulate and betray the women who loved him. I want all of them exposed, I told Sarah, not just Adrian. Every single man who helped him deceive me, who provided alibis and cover stories and celebrated his lies. I want their wives and girlfriends to know exactly who they're with. That's going to require distributing information to a lot of people, Sarah warned. It could get messy. I don't care, I said. They all participated in this. They all deserve to face consequences. Sarah nodded and made notes. We can do that. We'll prepare individual reports for each person on your distribution list. Their wives, their girlfriends, their employers if you want to go that route. By the time we're done, everyone in Adrian's orbit will know exactly what he did and who helped him do it. Perfect, I said. The week before the wedding, Jessica finally reached out to Adrian demanding answers about what she'd been hearing through various channels. Sarah's team had been subtly spreading information through Jessica's social circle, just enough to make her question Adrian's story without revealing that I knew everything. The resulting text conversation between Adrian and Jessica was illuminating. Jessica, I need to talk to you about something. Can you come over tonight? Adrian, is everything okay? Jessica, I've been hearing things about Maya, about your relationship with her. Is there something you're not telling me? Adrian, like what? Jessica, like are you actually engaged to her, planning to marry her? Because that's what multiple people have said and you've told me you're single. There was a long pause before Adrian responded. Adrian, it's complicated. Can we talk in person? I can explain everything. Jessica, you have one chance to tell me the truth, Adrian, one chance. Adrian never responded to that message. Instead, he called Jessica, and Sarah's team intercepted the call. The recording was damning. Look, Adrian's voice said, I was going to tell you. I've been trying to figure out how to tell you. Yes, technically I'm engaged to Maya, but it's not real. It's a business arrangement more than anything. Her firm wanted her to be more settled before promoting her to senior partner, so we agreed to get engaged to make her look more stable and committed. A business arrangement, Jessica's voice repeated flatly. You're planning an entire wedding as a business arrangement. It's just for appearances, Adrian insisted. After the wedding, we'll quietly separate. Get the marriage annulled. It's all for her career. She knows about you. She knows I love you and that we're together. She's okay with it because she gets what she needs professionally, and then we all move on. The lies came so easily to him, each one more elaborate than the last, each one designed to manipulate Jessica into staying with him despite mounting evidence that nothing he said could be trusted. I don't believe you, Jessica said. If this was just for appearances, why wouldn't you have told me from the beginning? Why lie about it? I wasn't lying, Adrian said. I was simplifying. I didn't want you to worry about something that wasn't real. Maya and I are roommates, essentially. Colleagues who are helping each other professionally. You're the person I love. You're the person I want to be with. Then why are you going through with the wedding? Jessica demanded. Why not just tell everyone the truth? Because Maya needs this for her career, Adrian said. And I owe her that much. She's been patient about our relationship, about waiting for me to be public with you. This is me fulfilling my obligation to her so we can finally be together without any complications. I listened to the recording and marveled at his ability to lie so fluently. He was inventing an entirely new narrative in real time, one designed to keep Jessica committed while he went through with marrying me. And he was doing it with complete confidence, as if he'd rehearsed this exact conversation multiple times in his head. I need time to think, Jessica said finally. This is a lot to process. Take all the time you need, Adrian said soothingly. But know that I love you. That hasn't changed and never will. Everything I'm doing is so we can have a future together. The call ended. I looked at Sarah across her desk. Is she going to believe him? Hard to say, Sarah admitted. He's very convincing. But the seeds of doubt are planted. Even if she wants to believe him, she'll be questioning everything now. That's what you wanted, right? Yes, I said. I want her confused and uncertain. I want her showing up at the wedding not sure what to believe. Because when I expose everything, I want her to realize in front of everyone that she was as deceived as I was. The final week before the wedding passed in a blur of activity. Last-minute details, dress alterations, coordination with vendors. My mother was in her element, managing logistics with military precision. My father, who'd been quietly supportive throughout everything, pulled me aside 2 days before the wedding. "Are you sure about this?" he asked. "It's not too late to call it off if you have any doubts." I wanted to tell him everything, to explain that I had no doubts, that I knew exactly what I was doing and why. But I couldn't risk anyone knowing my plan, couldn't chance someone trying to talk me out of it or accidentally revealing something to Adrian. So instead I just smiled and said, "I'm sure, Dad, everything's going to be perfect." The morning of June 13th dawned clear and beautiful, the kind of perfect summer day that seems designed for outdoor weddings. The venue in the Berkshires was stunning, a historic estate with manicured gardens and mountain views. The ceremony was scheduled for 5 in the evening, with cocktails and dinner to follow. 300 guests, including Adrian's parents, his extended family, his colleagues from the law firm, his friends from Yale and Harvard Law, and my own network of family, friends, and professional contacts from Thompson and Associates. I got ready with my bridesmaids in the bridal suite, a beautiful room overlooking the gardens. My sister helped me into my dress, a custom design I'd commissioned from one of Boston's most exclusive boutiques. It was stunning, elegant and sophisticated, exactly the kind of dress that would photograph beautifully in the wedding album we'd never create. My makeup artist made me look radiant. My hairstylist created an elegant updo that took 2 hours. Every detail was perfect, exactly as it should be for a bride on her wedding day. But inside, I felt nothing but cold calculation. This wasn't a celebration. This was an execution. At 4:30, I received a text from Sarah. "Everything is in place. All evidence is queued up and ready to display. Technical team has verified all systems work. You're good to go." I took a deep breath and looked at myself in the mirror. The woman staring back looked like a happy bride, but I knew the truth. I was a warrior preparing for battle, and I was about to win. The ceremony began precisely at 5. The string quartet played as guests took their seats in the outdoor pavilion. Adrian stood at the altar with Marcus beside him, looking nervous but happy in his custom tuxedo. His parents sat in the front row, his mother already dabbing at tears. My own family sat across the aisle, my mother looking elegant and proud, my father's expression carefully neutral. The music changed to the processional. My bridesmaids walked down the aisle, each one knowing what was about to happen and playing their roles perfectly. Then it was my turn. I took my father's arm and we began the walk. Adrian's face when he saw me was everything you'd expect from a groom seeing his bride. Wonder, love, joy, all of it completely authentic looking. He'd perfected the performance so thoroughly that even now, even knowing what I knew, I might have believed it if I didn't have 3 months of surveillance footage proving otherwise. We reached the altar. My father placed my hand in Adrian's and took his seat. The officiant began speaking, the traditional words about love and commitment and building a life together. Words that meant nothing in this context because the entire foundation was a lie. I stood there holding Adrian's hands, looking into his eyes, and waited for my moment. The officiant reached the part of the ceremony where he asks if anyone objects to the marriage. Usually this is just a formality, a traditional element that no one expects anyone to actually respond to. But I'd coordinated with the officiant in advance. He paused longer than normal, looking out at the assembled guests with an expression of carefully rehearsed solemnity. "If anyone present knows of any lawful impediment to this marriage, let them speak now or forever hold their peace." That was my cue. I turned to face the guests, still holding Adrian's hands, and spoke clearly into the microphone clipped to my dress. "I do," I said. "I object to this marriage." The assembled guests went silent. Adrian's face registered confusion, then forced humor, as if I were making some kind of joke he didn't understand but was willing to play along with. "Maya," he said quietly, "what are you doing?" "I object," I repeated, "because the man I'm supposed to marry has been living a double life for the past 3 years. Because while he's been planning this wedding with me, he's also been in a relationship with another woman named Jessica Whitmore. Because he's been stealing money from our joint accounts, forging my signature on loan documents, and planning to disappear after our wedding with my money and my assets. The silence deepened, becoming something thick and suffocating. I could see faces in the crowd registering shock, confusion, disbelief. Adrian's mother looked as if she might faint. My own mother had gone very pale, though she'd known this was coming. "Maya," Adrian said again, his voice taking on a placating tone, "I don't know what you think you've discovered, but this isn't the time or place. Can we please talk about this privately?" "No," I said firmly. "We're going to talk about it right here, right now, in front of everyone you've been lying to for years." I gestured to the technical team I'd hired, who'd been waiting for exactly this moment. The large screen behind the altar flickered to life, displaying the first slide of my presentation. It was a photo of Adrian and Jessica together in Vermont, kissing on a ski lift, dated from March of this year, when Adrian had told me he was at a firm retreat. "This is Jessica Whitmore," I said, my voice carrying clearly across the silent gathering. "Adrian has been in a relationship with her for the past 5 years, including the entire 3 years he and I have been together. He maintained 2 completely separate lives, telling each of us different lies about the nature of his relationship with the other." The screen changed to show text messages between Adrian and Jessica, the intimate conversations, the planning of secret trips, the references to me as the situation he was handling. Adrian's face had gone from confused to panicked. He released my hands and turned to the screen as if he could will it to stop showing evidence of his betrayal. "Maya, please," he said. "Stop this, whatever you think you know." "I know everything," I interrupted. "I have 3 months of surveillance footage, text messages, financial records, and testimony from multiple witnesses. I know about every lie you told, every secret trip you took, every dollar you stole from me. And now everyone else is going to know too." The screen changed again, showing surveillance video of Adrian and Jessica at the jewelry store, looking at engagement rings. Showing them at romantic dinners, at weekend getaways, at her apartment in moments of intimate affection. Each piece of evidence carefully selected to demonstrate beyond any doubt that this wasn't a brief affair or a moment of weakness, but a sustained, deliberate double life maintained with meticulous planning. The assembled guests were reacting now. Gasps, whispers, exclamations of shock. Adrian's mother was crying openly. Marcus looked stricken, realizing that his role in the deception was about to be exposed as well. And there, in the back row, I spotted Jessica. She'd come to the wedding without an invitation, probably unable to resist seeing what Adrian had been hiding from her. Her face was a mask of dawning horror as she watched the evidence play across the screen. "But it's not just Adrian," I continued, advancing the presentation to the next section. "He had help. Friends who provided alibis and cover stories. Colleagues who helped him maintain the deception. Let me introduce you to them." The screen now showed photos of Marcus, Derek, and 6 other men from Adrian's social circle. Beneath each photo was a summary of how they'd participated in Adrian's scheme. The fake events they'd created to give Adrian alibis. The warnings they'd provided when I was near locations Adrian and Jessica frequented. The celebrations where they'd congratulated him on successfully deceiving multiple women. "These men knew," I said. "They all knew what Adrian was doing. They helped him lie to me for 3 years. They thought it was funny. They thought it was impressive. They celebrated his ability to manipulate and betray." The men in question were visibly panicking now, some trying to leave, others looking pleadingly at their wives and girlfriends who were staring at them with expressions of dawning fury. I'd arranged for Sarah's team to provide each woman with a detailed report of her partner's role in the deception. They'd all know everything within minutes. The screen changed again, showing the financial documents. The money Adrian had stolen, the loans he'd taken out in my name, the systematic fraud he'd committed to fund his double life and prepare for his planned escape. "Adrian has stolen over $40,000 from me," I said. "He's forged my signature on loan documents that would have made me liable for his debts. He's been planning to disappear after our wedding with my money and with assets from Jessica's wealthy family." This wasn't just infidelity. This was fraud, theft, and systematic financial abuse. Adrian finally seemed to realize that there was no talking his way out of this. His expression shifted from panic to something harder, almost defiant. "You're insane," he said loudly. "You've manufactured this entire thing because you're paranoid and controlling. Everyone here knows I would never." "I have documentation of everything," I interrupted calmly. 3 months of surveillance conducted by professional investigators, text messages and emails you sent from your own phone and computer. Financial records that prove systematic theft. And I've provided copies of everything to law enforcement. There are detectives waiting outside right now to arrest you for fraud and forgery." As if on cue, 2 police officers entered the pavilion from the back. They'd been waiting for exactly this moment, coordinating with the local department and with prosecutors who'd reviewed all the evidence I'd compiled. "Adrian Castellano," one of the officers said, approaching the altar, "you're under arrest for fraud, forgery, identity theft, and larceny." They read him his rights while 300 guests watched in stunned silence. Adrian's face had gone ashen. He looked at me with an expression of pure hatred, all pretense of affection finally stripped away. "You ruined everything," he hissed as the officers handcuffed him. "You couldn't just let it go, you had to destroy it all." "You destroyed it," I replied evenly. "I just made sure everyone could see what you'd done." They led him away through the crowd of guests. Marcus tried to follow, probably planning to call a lawyer, but his wife grabbed his arm with a grip that looked painful. She just received her report about his role in the deception. He wasn't going anywhere without answering some hard questions. I turned to face the assembled guests, still standing at the altar in my wedding dress, speaking into the microphone with perfect calm. "I apologize for deceiving all of you about the nature of this event," I said. "But I needed witnesses. I needed everyone who matters in Adrian's life to see the truth about who he really is. Not the charming, successful lawyer he pretends to be, but the predator and fraud who builds his life on manipulating vulnerable women. Some of you helped him. You know who you are. You're going to face consequences for that. Others of you were deceived along with me. For that, I'm sorry. But mostly, I'm sorry that you wasted your time and money coming here to celebrate what you thought was a marriage. Instead, you got to witness the destruction of a man who deserved everything that's happening to him." I stepped down from the altar and walked back down the aisle. My bridesmaids fell in beside me, creating a protective corridor through the confused, whispering crowd. We made it to the bridal suite, and only then did I finally allow myself to react. I sat down heavily on the couch, still in my wedding dress, and started laughing. Not happy laughter, bitter, slightly hysterical laughter that came from months of suppressed rage finally finding release. My sister sat beside me and put her arm around my shoulders. "You did it," she said quietly. "You actually did it." "Yeah," I said, wiping tears from my eyes. "I did." Outside, the wedding that wasn't a wedding was dissolving into chaos. Guests were gathering in small groups, sharing information and reactions. Wives were confronting husbands about their roles in the deception. Jessica was apparently having some kind of breakdown in the parking lot, screaming at anyone who would listen that she'd been deceived too, that she hadn't known. The wedding planner was trying to figure out what to do about the catering and the string quartet and the hundreds of details that had been planned for a reception that would never happen. I didn't care about any of it. I'd accomplished what I'd set out to do. Adrian was arrested and would face criminal charges for fraud and theft. His reputation was destroyed beyond repair. His friends who'd helped him were facing their own reckonings with partners who just learned about their complicity. And everyone who'd witnessed the ceremony would carry this story with them, would tell it at dinner parties and social gatherings for years to come. Adrian Castellano, the successful lawyer who tried to maintain 2 fiancés and ended up arrested at his own wedding ceremony. Over the next several days, the fallout continued. Adrian was released on bail but immediately suspended from his law firm pending investigation into his conduct. Several of his clients requested new representation after learning about the fraud charges. His friends began distancing themselves, suddenly claiming they'd never really known about Jessica, that they just thought Adrian was having a normal affair, not maintaining a complete parallel relationship. Jessica reached out to me through Sarah, asking to meet. I agreed, curious to see what she wanted to say. We met at a coffee shop in Cambridge, both of us looking exhausted and emotionally wrung out. "I didn't know," she said immediately. "I swear I didn't know you were his fiancé. He told me you were an ex who wouldn't accept that the relationship was over. He said you were unstable and that he was trying to let you down easy. I believed him." "He's very convincing," I said. "That's his skill, creating elaborate lies that make each person complicit in their own deception." "I'm sorry," Jessica said, "for whatever role I played in hurting you. If I'd known the truth—" "You did know enough," I interrupted. "Maybe you didn't know the full scope, but you knew he was involved with someone else. You knew I existed. You chose to continue the relationship anyway because it was easier than asking hard questions." She flinched but didn't argue. "What happens now?" she asked. "Now Adrian faces criminal charges," I said, "and we both rebuild our lives with the knowledge that we were targeted by someone who saw us as resources to exploit rather than people to love. What you do with that knowledge is up to you." I didn't see Jessica again after that. I heard through various channels that she'd moved to New York, taking a position at a different law firm, trying to escape the scandal and the gossip. I hoped she'd learned something from the experience. I hoped she'd be more careful about who she trusted and less willing to accept convenient lies that allowed her to avoid uncomfortable truths. As for me, I threw myself back into work at Thompson and Associates. The Seaport project I'd been working on when I discovered Adrian's betrayal was completed successfully, and I was promoted to lead architect on an even larger development in downtown Boston. My professional life flourished in the aftermath of personal devastation. But personally, I struggled. The betrayal had damaged something fundamental in my ability to trust people. I went on dates occasionally, but I found myself analyzing every word, every gesture, looking for signs of deception that probably weren't there. I'd pull back whenever relationships started becoming serious, unable to shake the feeling that anyone who claimed to love me must have hidden motives. My therapist told me this was normal, that recovering from that level of systematic betrayal would take years of work. She helped me understand that what Adrian had done was a form of psychological abuse, that my hypervigilance and inability to trust were protective mechanisms that had served an important purpose, but needed to be gradually relaxed now that the actual threat was gone. It helped, somewhat. The knowledge that my reactions were normal and understandable. But it didn't make the damage any less real, or the healing any faster. Adrian's trial took place 14 months after the wedding that wasn't. He pleaded no contest to reduced charges, fraud and forgery, in exchange for a sentence of 4 years in prison and restitution of the money he'd stolen. His legal career was over. He'd been disbarred, his reputation destroyed so thoroughly that even after serving his sentence, he'd never work in law again. I attended the sentencing hearing. Adrian looked smaller somehow, diminished by his circumstances. When the judge asked if he had anything to say, he stood and looked directly at me. "I did love you," he said. "In my own way, I know you don't believe that now, but it's true. I'm not the monster you made me out to be at the wedding. I'm just someone who made mistakes and got in over my head trying to fix them." "You're not a monster," I replied when the judge allowed me to respond. "Monsters are obvious. They announce their danger with fangs and claws. You're something worse, a predator who wears the face of everything women are taught to trust. Successful, educated, charming, attentive. You exploit the fact that good people assume others are honest until proven otherwise. That's not making mistakes. That's systematic manipulation. And you're only sorry because you got caught." The judge sentenced him to 4 years in state prison. It wasn't enough, not really. 4 years couldn't compensate for 3 years of deception, for the systematic theft and fraud, for the psychological damage done to multiple women. But it was something. It was public acknowledgement that what he'd done was wrong, that there were consequences for that level of betrayal. I left the courthouse feeling not triumph exactly, but a sense of closure. This chapter of my life was finished. Adrian would spend the next 4 years in prison, and I would spend that time rebuilding myself into someone who could trust again, who could love again, who could believe in the possibility of authentic human connection despite everything I'd learned about deception and manipulation. 3 years after the wedding ceremony, I was sitting in my office at Thompson and Associates reviewing designs for a mixed-use development in Cambridge when my assistant buzzed to say I had a visitor. I wasn't expecting anyone, but I told her to send them in. The woman who entered was vaguely familiar, though I couldn't immediately place her. She was in her mid-30s, professionally dressed, with dark hair and an uncertain expression. "I don't know if you remember me," she said. "I'm Helena Morrison. I was married to Adrian, to the man you knew as Adrian Castellano 7 years ago, before he changed his name and moved to Boston." I gestured for her to sit down, my mind racing. "He was married before. For 6 months," Helena confirmed. "In Connecticut. He used the name David Morrison then. We met when I was going through a difficult divorce from my first husband. David Adrian was my lawyer. He was charming and supportive and seemed to genuinely care about me. We started dating while my divorce was being finalized. He proposed 3 months later." "Let me guess," I said. "He convinced you to give him access to your finances, maybe to consolidate accounts or handle property transfers to make things easier during a complicated time." Helena nodded. "He said it was standard practice for couples who were getting married, especially when one partner was coming out of a difficult divorce. I trusted him. He was a lawyer. Why would I question his advice? How much did he steal?" She looked down at her hands. $78,000. My entire divorce settlement. By the time I realized what he'd done, he'd disappeared. Changed his name, moved to a different state, covered his tracks so thoroughly that I couldn't track him down. The police said without being able to locate him, they couldn't pursue charges. "I'm sorry," I said quietly, "for what he did to you, for not discovering the truth earlier before he could hurt other people." "That's not why I'm here," Helena said. "I came to thank you. When I heard about what happened at your wedding, about how you exposed him publicly and made sure he faced consequences, it felt like justice for all of us. All the women he's targeted over the years. You did what I couldn't. You made him pay." We talked for over an hour. Helena told me about her marriage to Adrian, about the warning signs she'd missed, about the systematic way he'd isolated her from friends and family while stealing everything she owned. The details were hauntingly familiar, the same patterns, the same manipulation techniques, just with different specific circumstances. Adrian, or David, or whatever his real name was, had been running these cons for at least a decade, possibly longer. "There are probably others," Helena said. "Other women he targeted before me, between me and you. He's been doing this for years, perfecting his technique, learning from each relationship how to be more effective next time." "Probably," I agreed. "But he won't be doing it anymore. 4 years in prison, a disbarred legal career, and a reputation destroyed so thoroughly that any woman who Googles his name will find hundreds of articles about what he did. His days as a predator are over." "Thanks to you," Helena said. "Thanks to the fact that you were smart enough to investigate, patient enough to build a case, and brave enough to expose him publicly instead of just walking away quietly." After Helena left, I sat at my desk thinking about all the women who'd crossed paths with Adrian over the years. Helena, who'd lost her divorce settlement. The women between Helena and me whose stories I'd probably never hear. Jessica, who'd believed she was in a genuine relationship and ended up as complicit in deception as I'd been. And me, who'd come the closest to actually marrying him before discovering the truth. We were all connected now, bound by the experience of having trusted someone who'd used that trust as a weapon against us. But we'd survived. We'd rebuilt. And in exposing Adrian, I'd done more than just get revenge for what he'd done to me. I'd protected future victims, ensured there would be no more women added to the list of people whose lives he'd damaged. That thought brought something that felt almost like peace. 5 years after the wedding ceremony, I was in a genuinely happy relationship with someone I'd met through work, an engineer named David Chen who was patient with my trust issues, who understood why I needed to move slowly and carefully, who never pressured me to be more vulnerable than I was ready to be. We'd been dating for 2 years, taking things at a pace that probably seemed glacial to outside observers, but felt right to both of us. David knew about Adrian, knew about the wedding ceremony and the betrayal and the years of therapy I'd needed to process everything. He'd read articles about the case, had Googled Adrian's name, and found the hundreds of stories about the fraud and the arrests. And he'd still chosen to pursue a relationship with me, despite knowing I came with complicated emotional baggage and deeply ingrained trust issues. "I don't blame you for being careful," he said once, when I apologized for being closed off and slow to commit. "After what you went through, being careful isn't paranoid. It's smart. I'm not going anywhere. I'll be here when you're ready to let me in all the way." That patience, that willingness to let me heal at my own pace, was what finally allowed me to begin trusting again. To believe that not everyone was hiding secret motives or maintaining elaborate deceptions. That some people really were who they claimed to be. That genuine love actually existed. That I could risk vulnerability again without being destroyed. I still thought about Adrian sometimes. About the man I'd believed him to be, which was completely different from the man he actually was. About the 3 years I'd spent building a future with someone who'd been systematically planning to destroy me. About the wedding ceremony where I'd exposed everything, turning what should have been the happiest day of my life into a reckoning that would haunt everyone who'd participated in his deception. Part of me wished I could go back and warn my younger self, the woman who'd fallen in love with Adrian's performance without questioning whether it was authentic. But I also recognized that experiencing that level of betrayal had changed me in ways that weren't entirely negative. I was more careful now, yes, more guarded and harder to deceive. But I was also stronger, more resilient, more certain of my own capability to survive devastating circumstances. I'd been targeted by a professional predator, and I'd beaten him at his own game. I'd taken the worst thing that ever happened to me and transformed it into a demonstration of strength and strategic thinking. And in doing so, I'd protected other women from experiencing the same betrayal, had exposed a pattern of abuse that had been operating unchecked for over a decade. That meant something. That mattered, even when the personal cost felt almost unbearable. The woman I'd been before discovering Adrian's betrayal was gone, replaced by someone harder and more cynical, but also more authentically herself. Someone who didn't need external validation or romantic partnership to feel complete. Someone who knew exactly what she was capable of, both in terms of professional success and personal resilience. I'd survived the worst thing I could imagine, and I'd done more than just survive. I'd fought back with intelligence and strategic precision. I'd turned victimization into empowerment. And if that came at the cost of being able to trust easily or love naively, well, that seemed like a fair trade. Because the woman in the mirror now wasn't someone who could be deceived and manipulated. She was someone who'd looked betrayal in the face, documented every detail of its operation, and then systematically destroyed the person responsible for inflicting it. That woman was stronger than any version of me that had existed before Adrian, and I wouldn't trade her for anything. If this story of strategic revenge and survival kept you captivated, hit that like button right now. My favorite moment was when Maya stood at the altar and calmly exposed Adrian's entire double life in front of 300 guests, transforming what should have been their wedding into his public destruction. What was your favorite moment? Drop it in the comments below. And if you have a story about exposing a cheater or getting revenge on someone who betrayed you, share it in the comments. Your story might help someone else going through something similar. Don't miss more empowering stories like this. Remember, the best revenge isn't just exposing the truth. It's refusing to let betrayal destroy who you are.